Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MSDynamicsWorld.com. I am joined on this episode by our assistant editor for MSDynamicsWorld and MSCloudNews, Eamon McCarthy-Earls. Hey, Eamon, welcome.
Thanks, Jason. Always great to be here.
Great to have you, and a busy news roundup episode that we are going to tackle right now. And we are going to start with really the biggest news item in the world, and one that has certainly touched the business world, the technology ecosystem, and more specifically, the Microsoft partner ecosystem, even more specifically, the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem. That is obviously the war in Ukraine and all the damage it's doing, all the chaos it's causing, all the pain it's causing there, and to people in the region as well, including those fleeing from Ukraine. I mean, we've covered some angles of the crisis so far, starting with from my perspective, the reaction of Microsoft partners, many of whom have offices, have colleagues, have maybe the basis of their business in Ukraine, and have for years. It's been obviously a country that has, as it has, I guess, moved along in time, it has lots of well-educated professionals, and it has had peace relatively. If you don't, other than, I suppose, the growing crisis over the last several years and sort of the proxy war in the East, and now with this new war, these partners, as one segment of the society and the impact, have been scrambling to support their employees, support their colleagues, find ways to do what they can, which is quite difficult if they're outside the country. So we picked up on some of those early efforts to support those colleagues with money, with help relocating when needed. And that has kind of evolved over the last couple of weeks, watching kind of very painfully on social media and through reports from various people, various companies about what they have done, what they have been experiencing. And I just want to mention the most recent effort, which is from the Microsoft Dynamics partner channel in particular. It's a new site that has been created by a coalition of several partners who are all working toward supporting their colleagues in the country. It's called DynamicsUkraine.org, and it's really a link through, and it goes through to a GoFundMe where they're aiming to kind of collect all their funds, all their support, and target them toward the people who need them, who are also connected to this community.
Yeah, it really has been incredible to see the response of the entire sort of Microsoft channel to all of this, especially, as you mentioned, because Ukraine has really become such a hub for technology business over the last 10 to 15 years, with some of the largest numbers of, I guess, C++ developers in the world, and obviously a huge presence for Dynamics and Azure and sort of projects related to both of those technologies. So it's definitely a very serious situation over there, and it's been nice to see the response from partners and from Microsoft to this kind of evolving situation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's jumped out at me is the business owners and executives who are trying to help now. I mean, they set up businesses in Ukraine with no expectation that they would ever have to deal with a crisis like this. These are not crisis specialists. These are not, humanitarian organizations that have sort of mechanisms in place to, provide support, provide assistance. So they're really doing their best in a very, very difficult situation, obviously, and often heartbreaking situations. Just to sort of move into some of the more specific risks and outcomes, I guess you'd say, of what's happening there. You did some coverage of what the invasion and the war actually might mean for cloud security.
Absolutely. We had some great responses on that topic. This was actually in the lead up to the Russian invasion. And certainly one of the most interesting perspectives we got was from a cybersecurity expert who was working with the Ukrainian government in Kiev at the time that the invasion began, and actually had to hurry to get out of the country along with millions of others. And so the perspective seems to be that there is a continued heightened risk, of cyber attacks, of course, targeted most of all at Ukraine, but elsewhere as well, and that it's really important for organizations to be at their most vigilant right now in terms of cyber risk. Now, we haven't seen tremendous numbers of cyber attacks. We've seen, I gather, some degree of Russian activity targeting Ukraine, but not quite the unlimited malware we've often seen in past skirmishes online between different countries. So it remains to be seen exactly what will happen in that area. It seems that on the ground in Ukraine, Russia has targeted mostly power plants and a lot of critical infrastructure there versus deploying quite as many cyber weapons. But there's definitely a possibility that that will happen, or that there will be sort of clapback actions by Russia against European and U.S. government facilities, or against businesses beyond Russia's borders with kind of advanced cyber weapons.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say there's always risks for new attacks of that kind, and I think it's worth noting. We may have even pointed this out, that Microsoft had reported in the early days of the invasion that they right around the time it began that they had worked to shut down some cyber attacks that they detected, and built some new updates to their defensive software to support that. All right. Well, let's move on. We do want to cover some of the other news and coverage that we've had recently, and I wanted to start with another item that broke recently and it impacts Microsoft leadership, and that's Cecilia Flombaum announcing that she is leaving her role as the channel lead for Microsoft Business Applications. Cecilia has been at Microsoft for 20 plus years. I haven't really confirmed exactly what she's doing next, whether she's indeed leaving Microsoft, which I suspect is the case, or exactly what. But anyway, she did announce that she's leaving that role. She's no longer going to lead the channel ecosystem, and she's really seen it through a significant transition. I mean, she's been there since 2017. Roles with Dynamics Channel dating all the way back to 2012. And 2017 to 2022 has been a critical transition period to the cloud for Dynamics and for Dynamics partners. You might argue it's still not done, but there's been a lot of, really core business changes that have been required of partners to adapt to Microsoft's priorities in that space. And she's been really one of the faces of that change for Microsoft. She's not, the highest level executive in business applications, but when a new decision came down and a new initiative, a new goal, new positioning, she was often the person standing on stage or in front of a camera, selling and advocating for those positions, and often taking probably some of the heat and the criticism if partners weren't happy. And partners have been known to voice their displeasure quite frequently when things when they're not happy with what they hear. So anyway, she's really been a key person in this space, and her departure means that there will be some additional sort of leadership shifts, which we're watching for. There's word of some people perhaps rising into her position from within the business applications team already. That I guess remains to be seen. We'll be watching for that.
Another shakeup we've seen recently is that the Dynamics 365 ERP program's CVP, Mohammed Alam, has announced his departure from Microsoft. That's something else you reported on recently.
Yeah, that's a little older, and Alam, he's already gone. He's left Microsoft, and he's now at SAP running a segment of their business. I believe it's the supplier network element there. So he again, someone who saw timing wise. I actually don't have it in front of me here exactly when he began. I think it was 2018. So kind of not too far from the timing of Cecilia, but took over product responsibilities. I remember at the time he did not come from the R&D organization, so he was not like sort of a developer or a technical executive. And there was some questions about whether he could sort of play that overall leader role without that sort of deep technical sort of resume. I think he did, and I think people who I talked to were overwhelmingly positive about their sentiments about working with him as the leader for first just finance and operations, the enterprise software, but then overall responsibility for Dynamics. And I personally always had a very hard time trying to sort of read between the lines on how he was doing as a leader, because he never spoke to us. I think he did very few interviews overall, and I think he worked a lot behind the scenes and built good relationships. And so that's another element of the leadership that's going to be changing at Microsoft. I think it's also telling, perhaps both of these leaders who we're just talking about here, they both took time off and then immediately left Microsoft. It's a bit of a pattern that has been known to take place over time when executives, managers are departing Microsoft. First, they go away for a bit, and then they come back and announce their departure, which is, take that for you. But that seems to have happened for both of them in this last few months.
Well, one story that I had a chance to write about last spring when it first broke in the news was the Microsoft acquisition of Nuance, which has now been approved by all the various antitrust authorities and has moved ahead and become a completed acquisition at this point. Jason, could you tell us a little about sort of the details of that now that we're almost a year out from the original announcement and it's much more of a definite and finalized acquisition?
Yeah, it's completed. Microsoft's now moving ahead with it, and they sort of celebrated the sort of formalization of that acquisition with I guess a stack of new blog posts and a press release as well from different elements of the interested parties in who are involved in what it really means. So you had sort of the top level press release, just sort of formalizing the completion of the acquisition, like you said, after it cleared sort of different country level approvals, and then we had a blog post on health, Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, and the promise that Nuance will hopefully bring for that sort of industry cloud offering. We had a blog post from Scott Guthrie, which was sort of one level down, I guess, in sort of broad breadth from the high level press release, and then we had another blog post from Corporate Vice President Charles Lamanna of the Business Applications Group, along with sort of his counterpart in Nuance, talking about all the wonderful opportunities to bring Nuance AI technology together and in customer service and contact centers, working with Dynamics 365 customer service. So kind of multiple levels of sort of announcements and positioning there all at the same time. I actually found the wording of the customer service sort of Lamanna blog post to be most interesting because it was most specific to me, talking about sort of really almost imagining a single solution that combines Nuance tools and technology with D365 and selling them together. I actually asked Microsoft about that because it was a little unclear to me sort of how that, what all the wording really meant. It doesn't really mean anything for now, was what they told me. There's no changes to either organization. They'll still work sort of in separate silos or in separate organizations for now. I think it's likely that over time they will integrate more, but these healthcare scenarios and the technology there, and the I guess maybe some of the AI that can be expanded to other industries, to other customer service scenarios, contact center scenarios, that seems to be where Microsoft is most optimistic about really making the most of the investment. One
of the other things we've heard about recently is some of the aspects of the ISV journey. This is a pretty interesting topic that you wrote about, with, I thought, some pretty interesting perspectives.
Yeah, so this was really I sort of noticed a conversation, I guess maybe a sort of a podcast episode interview between Microsoft MVP Rick McCutcheon, a friend of the site, and someone who I think everyone in the Dynamics community likely knows or has seen, and Microsoft Worldwide Senior Manager for ISV Alliances and Partner Development, Armaceli Omomenle. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. But Armaceli, spoke very candidly about how he is encouraging ISVs to, do their strategic planning to align with Microsoft, essentially. And he offered a few different strategies, a few different recommendations. And so I think it's worth listening to that interview if you're an ISV and you're sort of looking for where is Microsoft and how is Microsoft encouraging ISVs, whether they're globally managed, country specific, so where they are totally unmanaged. And he painted that picture of sort of that spectrum of different types of engagement with Microsoft and who fits in well where. So yeah, it's definitely worth hearing, I think, if you are in that space of how he breaks it down.
Now, of course, one of the other areas that we've been covering a lot recently is some of the upcoming in-person events that are actually beginning to pop up again, namely the DynamicsCon and the DynamicsCon event and others that are shaping up in the days to come.
Yeah, DynamicsCon is the next event in the calendar here. That takes place March 15th through 17th. We are a media sponsor of it. We've done, I think, 5 articles sort of previewing the event. So we'll put a link in the show notes for that, and you can catch up with all of those. Some very interesting, presentations coming up. I mean, one that just comes to mind was an interview I did with Mariano Gomez, an old friend of ours. He's going to be presenting at the conference on how GP and Power Platform can work together to modernize GP solutions in a way, and why it's actually one of the really great opportunities in making the Power Platform shine. I would say is taking if you want to consider GP it's an on-premises solution, right? It's it's debatable whether you want to call it legacy at this point, but it's certainly on-premises. It's really not a cloud-first type of offering, but there's some great opportunities to use it with Power Platform that Mariano is going to get into. And when you look broadly at Power Platform, I mean, that's really one of the places where it hopefully will shine. I think if you're a Microsoft partner and you're looking for ways to capitalize on it. So, a lot of different articles there. And the event is it's always a lively one. It's virtual. This one's virtual. DynamicsCon also has a live event planned in the September timeframe, but this one is always a well attended event and lots of good content, and it's free.
Yeah, a few of the topics we've heard about in connection with that are things like sort of the AL guidelines for Dynamics 365 Business Central, some interesting perspectives on D365 FO, worldwide sort of requirements. Also, I thought some interesting kind of pre-event coverage by Asif Rahmani about the Microsoft 365 conference. So I definitely encourage our readers to go ahead and check out that. And lest I leave it out, some event preview coverage of the European Power Platform Conference as well. So definitely go ahead and check out all those topics.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit in April. There's several in-person events happening, like you said, Microsoft 365 conference, which we wrote about because they actually added a Dynamics Power Platform track. There's a European Power Platform conference, which, like you said, is actually another one where they've sort of added Power Platform to an event that has been focused more on SharePoint, Office 365, and Azure. It's going to be kind of co-located with those. And then there's also Directions North America coming up.
Well, as we get back in the saddle again, so to speak, with in-person events, I continue to reach out and hear from experts in the field about some of the evolving trends we continue to see that I'm sure we'll hear about at many of these events. And one of those is hybrid cloud, always a perennial subject at big Microsoft events. And on that subject, I had a great discussion with Dwan van der Westhuizen at Insono, who's sort of an expert in this area of cloud evolution. And he had a lot of very interesting perspectives that you can discover in our Q&A with him. One of his high-level takeaways seems to be that many organizations essentially are stuck with multi-cloud against their own wishes. They would prefer to be with a single cloud provider, but due to acquisitions and things like that, they're often stuck with multi-cloud systems that can prove to be pretty complicated to work with on a day-to-day basis. And for additional coverage in that area, we actually have a few pieces coming out soon with one of our most active contributors of late on the MSCloudNews side of things, Jeff Kreisman, with some really interesting perspective on acquisitions and how that's handled and sort of the migration challenges around that. So very much following on from van der Westhuizen's sort of perspectives in this area.
Yeah, that was a great piece. Definitely recommend anyone check it out who has investments in the cloud, which is likely almost everyone listening. I wanted to call out another feature. This one from Sean Senat of Columbus, a piece about contract manufacturing and some of the challenges that they're going to that industry faces in these times. I mean, pandemic alone has thrown all sorts of new challenges that relate to the supply chain and to the demands of their clients. And some of the things that these companies can invest in to really outperform their competitors as contract manufacturers. So he really does a great job outlining some of those priorities and just key areas of focus if you're in that industry. So really recommend that one.
And likewise, Kuldeep Gupta contributed a really interesting piece on modern approvals for Dynamics 365 project operations. He always tends to have pretty good perspectives on sort of the project operations world. And I thought this had a lot of good explanation in it. So definitely encourage our readers to check out those pieces and many others that we didn't have time to profile today.
Absolutely. So, Eamon, what else do you have planned?
Well, I'm working with a few different contributors on some pieces I'm pretty excited about, and of course, looking forward to additional coverage as we head into the springtime and into a more active sort of conference season as we get more and more events coming up this year. And on the Microsoft Cloud side, I continue to follow some of the events in Ukraine and some of the evolving sort of security picture there. We'll plan to report on all of that over the weeks to come.
All right, excellent. Yeah, and from my side, we have more event coverage coming up, certainly as those roll along. Microsoft leadership changes absolutely remain very interesting, and we'll keep our eye there. And I think with that, we can wrap things up. Eamon, thanks once again for joining me. I look forward to doing it again soon.
Oh, it was great to join.
And this has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Eamon can be reached at earls@msdynamicsworld.com. And for all of our updates, you can follow MS Dynamics World and MS Cloud News on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.